How Roman elites rigged the economy while blaming the poor. Rome liked simple explanations. When prices rose, it blamed greed. When food ran short, it blamed hoarders. When riots erupted, it blamed moral decay. The story was always the same. If people suffered, it was their own fault. But that story wasn't just wrong, it was designed. Because Rome's economy wasn't broken by the poor, it was rigged by the powerful. At the top of Roman society sat the Senate, men who wrapped themselves in tradition, who spoke endlessly of duty, restraint, and the republic, who warned constantly about corruption and excess. But behind the language of virtue sat something else entirely, a class of elites who understood power better than anyone else in Rome. Officially, Roman senators were forbidden from commerce. They were not supposed to trade, speculate, or profit from markets. That was the law. And, like most Roman laws, it existed mainly to be circumvented. Senators did not buy and sell directly. They owned land. They financed agents. They controlled networks of clients, freedmen, and intermediaries. Through these layers, they dominated production, distribution, and pricing while maintaining plausible deniability. Land was everything. Not money, not wages, not trade. Land. Land produced food. Food produced stability. Stability produced political survival. And Roman elites accumulated land with ruthless efficiency. As Rome expanded, conquest flooded Italy with new territory. In theory, this should have created opportunity. More land meant more farms. More farms meant more citizens. More citizens meant a stronger republic. That was the promise. The reality was different. Wars dragged on for years. Citizen soldiers left their farms unattended. Crops failed. Debts accumulated. Taxes did not pause for patriotism. Creditors did not forgive absence. When soldiers returned, many found their land gone, sold to pay debts, foreclosed by lenders, absorbed quietly into larger estates. And waiting on the other side of those transactions were senators. Elites bought land cheaply from desperation, not with swords, with contracts. Small farms vanished. Large estates, latifundia, replaced them. Vast slave-worked properties focused not on local needs, but on scale and profit. This transformed the Roman economy. Free labor declined. Slaves replaced citizens. Wages collapsed. And displaced farmers flooded into the cities. Rome's urban poor did not appear by accident. They were produced. As land concentrated, so did power. Senators didn't just own more property, they controlled supply. Grain production shifted away from local consumption, toward centralized distribution, toward Rome. Why Rome? Because Rome guaranteed demand. The grain dole ensured the city would always buy, at fixed prices paid by the state. This created a perfect system for elites. They owned the land, they controlled production, they sold to the government.
Risk was socialized. Profit was private. And when prices rose, they blamed the poor. When bread became expensive, senators accused merchants of greed. When shortages appeared, they accused hoarders. When riots followed, they accused moral decay. But the real manipulation happened quietly. Elites stockpiled grain after harvests. They waited. They released it slowly during shortages. Prices rose. Profits followed. This wasn't illegal because the law was written to punish small actors, not large ones. A shopkeeper hoarding grain could be fined or beaten. A senator storing thousands of tons through intermediaries was invisible. Roman law did not protect markets, it protected status. Meanwhile, the consequences fell downward. Rents rose as land disappeared from citizen hands. Wages fell as slaves replaced free workers. Food prices became unpredictable. Life for the poor grew unstable. Not because they were lazy, but because the system demanded instability below, so stability could exist above. When people protested, Rome did not investigate markets, it investigated morality. The poor were lectured. They were told to work harder, to accept discipline, to live modestly. At the same time, senators hosted banquets during shortages. They built villas larger than entire villages. They speculated on land while preaching restraint. This hypocrisy was not a flaw, it was a feature. The Republic claimed equality before the law, but economic reality said otherwise. Elites shifted risk downward. When harvests failed, small farmers collapsed. When markets fluctuated, merchants went bankrupt. When cities starved, the masses rioted. But elites endured. They diversified, they waited, they absorbed. Losses were socialized, profits were privatized. Rome's economy became a funnel. Everything flowed upward. Blame flowed downward. Even reform was neutralized. When politicians proposed land redistribution, the Senate delayed, debated, diluted. They warned that reform would destabilize Rome, that helping the poor would ruin markets, that inequality was natural. But inequality wasn't natural, it was engineered. Tiberius Gracchus saw this clearly. He proposed enforcing existing land limits, not confiscation, not revolution, just enforcement. The Senate responded by killing him, not because he was radical, but because he threatened concentration. After that, reform became impossible. Elites learned a lesson. Violence worked. The Roman economy hardened. Latifundia expanded. Urban poverty exploded. Dependency replaced opportunity. And Rome responded with distraction, bread, games, spectacle. Rather than fix the system, they managed symptoms. As long as the city was fed, no one asked who controlled the food. This is the genius of elite power. It doesn't argue, it reframes. When prices rose, the poor were blamed. When unemployment spread, foreigners were blamed. When unrest erupted, moral decay was blamed. Never the structure, never the monopolies, never the land grabs. By the late Republic, Rome no longer had a free economy. It had an elite-managed one. Markets existed, but outcomes were predetermined. Civil wars did not begin with hunger. They began with resentment. A society that understands the game is rigged, but has no legal way to change it, eventually breaks. Rome's collapse did not start with invasion. It started with concentration. When land, supply, and law sit in the same hands, markets stop being markets. They become instruments. Rome blamed the poor until the very end, even as elites fled, even as provinces broke away, even as the treasury emptied. Blame is cheap. Reform is expensive. Rome chose blame and paid the price. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and Rome's warning is clear. When elites rig the economy and teach society to blame the victims, collapse doesn't arrive suddenly. It arrives logically, slowly, quietly, inevitably.